This interview was originally cut from my Fermi Paradox video, but I do think that although it goes against my personal beliefs, it's incredibly fascinating.
Yeah, the theory is effectively something to the extent of there's so much out there that suggests that humans aren't the only beings. Why don't we have more evidence that suggests that there are other things out there? Correct? That's the basic premise of it.
Yeah.
I fully agree with that. Mr. Um, he does as well. And I would assume Mr. does too here. But in the end, it's just so hard to believe that we would be the only beings or the only intelligent life in the universe. And we certainly can't be the ones that have the best technology. So it's too hard for me to say um, that it's not possible or it's unrealistic. I fully believe that there's more stuff out there. But it is weird to me that there's not more concrete evidence unless it's just not shared, which is probably the most realistic.
Yeah, that's
answer
where
to
that's the
that.
camp that I side into is that like if you look at just like humanity right now, like people have been around for several million years, but the universe is billions of years, and so we're just such a small little fraction, especially with intelligent life in like the modern era. With people, we've only really been around for hundreds of years, and developing this technology now is such like a small little blip in this whole thing. So we, I think, don't have technology to necessarily detect what's out there. I do believe that we have been visited throughout time. I'm a big believer in the ancient astronaut theory, is that we've had ancient visitors from the past that helped form a lot of or influence a lot of civilization, religious belief, things like that. I'm a big believer that Skinwalker Ranch is also a portal into the universe, and I do believe we get visited, but they have such advanced technology that they remain undetected or it's being censored by government entities or something like that. Are you guys familiar with Skinwalker Ranch?
Not to the extent you are, I don't think.
It's a location in Utah that actually History Channel has a show on it running right now. It's like the Mysteries of Skinwalker Ranch or something. But the belief is that there were private entities that owned this property but had been visited and scared off by what they had been encountering to the point that they finally said that they don't feel safe and they had been visited like they claim that aliens had actually come to their house and things like that. They've seen things for years, and they finally had enough of it that they left. But Big Money bought it. Billionaire, I can't remember his name, purchased it, and he's actually put together a whole program of real scientists that document it, and they actually have documented real anomalies that have happened there. And so I am a big believer that aliens do come to Earth and they make themselves known or don't, and I think our government is involved.
Involved in an inviting way or in a cover up way?
I think in a little bit of both. I think that my big belief is that when they have come, we are just one of many places that are just being visited, documented. Like something I learned at Roswell is that one of the big theories is that why aliens, especially in the 1940s and thereafter, have come was that they began detecting in the universe our nuclear tests. And so it was almost like little blips in like the big radar of the universe. That's when we got we went from an uncivilized to a civilized planets in like the universe's eyes, and that's when they continually came to visit, and that's why Roswell happened, is that's what the testing that happened in the deserts, and aliens crashed trying to do recon work, and basically since then have been in touch with government entities, tipping us off on like what is actually out there, giving us ideas and technologies, also warnings. From what I've read, there are different types of aliens that some of them are very benevolent, some of them aren't. And so I think some of them are here to help us and warn us about potential harm that could be out there.
Are there theories out there of how many different alien species existed? Like, is there an agreed upon there's alien type A, type B, etc. then?
I don't know the exact number, but there are known different species of aliens. The grays are the most common ones.
Is that the one everybody visualizes?
Yeah, like kind of like the little shorts. They call them the green men, even though they're more gray, like the elongated heads, bigger eyes. There's the reptilian. There's several different kinds that I know of, but I'm sure that there's an actual amount that they claim, but I don't know what that is.
So I'm gonna raise this. The closest star to Earth, other than the sun, is roughly like hundreds of light years away. So for aliens to come to Earth, even if they like saw nuclear explosions or whatever, it would still take like a couple hundred years after that, traveling at the speed of the light, to actually come here.
Yeah, and that's something that's definitely something you have to think about is that there's nothing close by, and at least with technology that we know of that can do that. And that's why I think that with us being around just a small blimp on the radar, my belief is that technology exists that we are completely unaware of, that they can just, they are way more advanced and have ways to do that. Like that's why, again, like I said to Skinwalker Ranch, I do believe it's a portal to somewhere else, and so it's almost like wormholes or it jumps space.
Well, there's certainly some potential there, right? Like all of the information that's out about the little pill-shaped goes kind of up and down, side to side, but can vertically or horizontally move really, really smoothly. It can sit at a hover, and then it can just rocket out of sight. And there's some documented things of U.S. Air Force pilots that obviously tried to chase these things down, only to just be blown away. And so if that's a reality that they can just, in the snap of a finger, just be out of sight, so far gone that nobody knows where it went, how it got there, it very much suggests that they have a craft that would be able to withstand that. And all of the shapes of them, too, even seem to be in line with being able to handle that. So, I don't know. I think you're probably right in that there's technology out there that would allow them to move insane speeds, if not, like you're saying, jump through portals or whatever. I can't discount it. It's just, there's too much that has happened to discount those theories.
Another thing that I've heard, which is a really interesting thing that I'm not very educated on, but it's actually something recently I stumbled upon, is that instead of just referring to them as extraterrestrials, I've heard of ultra-terrestrials, which are entities that can change dimensions. And so they can almost come in and out of reality from what we can perceive. And that's one of the big theories about like a Bigfoot creature, for example. That's something that can people see, but then all of a sudden just kind of disappears. And I think aliens, not that they necessarily are that, but kind of an interesting thing is that we might not be able to perceive them constantly being here as well.
Is that to suggest that they could materialize on command in different spaces and places?
Yeah. That's referred to as ultra-terrestrials. It was a theory, I think, created in like the 70s, so it's old, but like it was something that I just recently found. And so, again, these are just beings that we have no comprehension of and what they are capable of. What do you think over there? Sorry, I just kind of...
Oh, no, I mean, there is evidence to suggest a fourth dimension, and to expect them to act and behave in ways that are human, I think is unreasonable. To try to use our own knowledge of what life is or is not, I don't think is truly valid in the argument of aliens. We do not know what their biology is. We do not know what planet they call home. We don't know how they evolved. But what we can determine is that there's evidence of us being visited, which would lead to a threshold theory, potentially. If they're monitoring us, then they are watching us. They're visiting us, they're paying attention to us, but they're not actively confronting us. So we have not reached the threshold for them to consider us viable to communicate with.
I think it's also interesting what you said about them having. Why would we expect them to act as humans do when they are not human? And I think there's a lot of truth in that, right? I mean, we have no idea what a skill set would look like. We just know that it has to be greater than our own. Otherwise, we would be the ones visiting them. Maybe we're a newer species, and that's part of it, in that they've just been around for longer and they have had the capacity to expand technologically further and faster. Maybe the resources are better, or whatever the case. But in either case, we're clearly not as advanced as them, which I think is the most intriguing thing out there, because ultimately it means that there's a possibility of existing beyond the capacity that we know it, and that would and could include living in different galaxies and planets that aren't our own and stuff like that. I think what I'm most curious about is when would that actually happen? Like when could we possibly have the technology where Earth is not our only planet? Where else might humans exist that we can get to? How long is it going to take for us to be able to get there? Whether it's the moon, Mars, or something that's multiple light years away, and we have the capacity to say, hey, yeah, let's expend these resources and this technology because we're so comfortable traveling X amount of light years away that we can not only get there, but we can expect a return with information. Like, that's a really, really insane thing to think about. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I just don't know when. I don't know how many years away we are. I don't see it's happening in our lifetime, but
the only way I can see that happening is getting outside help. Is that I don't think that we, again, like in our lifetime for sure, but that how long humanity is even on the course that we are going as a human race and on the planet, how long could we even sustain what we're doing? But I think outside help would be needed in order for those things to happen.
Would that come only from species, or would you say in terms of like finding some resource that would just
and that's
change
possible
the game?
too? Yeah, it could be something that comes or we discover or something like that. But
I would also go as far as saying there's got to be something, right? Because there's no way that you have several billionaires all investing in similar projects to be to try and achieve something in the galaxies. Whether it's Elon Musk or Richard Branson, and then in that search there's like a Chinese business guy that's he's from Texas though, but he's a multi-billionaire and he's got some investments on like space transport. Like these people have to know something, or they're just forward thinking enough to recognize that what's out there is going to be valuable and it will help us, and they just want to be the first to be able to help with that process.
Right.
Obviously, not only profit driven, but also probably curiosity.
Right. Yeah. Because if you can control whatever that is out there, then that's obviously the future. And if you can get, like, I'm not necessarily going to call it a monopoly, but if you can gain control or access, definitely you guide the future.
Thinking about the technology of them being able to visit us, we're only recently scratching the surface on what it's going to take, right? So we've been able to explore different atomic elements of the Hadron Collider just within the last decade. And just within the last year or two, we've actually come near to 100% efficiency with fusion, right? Being able to expend less energy and getting more energy out. I think that is one of the major thresholds technologically for us to be able to advance our space travel as a whole. That's kind of been the hinging point on whether or not we're going to be able to efficiently travel interstellarly or not.
Even then, like the James Webb Telescope and them talking about how all of the colors that the telescope was picking up in the imagery, and it's just that our eyes can't actually see that many colors at once. It was a picture that it took, and everyone's like, "There's no way this is real." That's actually what it looks like. We just can't see that. I don't know if it was our eyes or if it was just visually we weren't able to see it because it's so far away. But like the fact that we're just on the cusp of, like you said, exploring a really, really small segment of what else is out there it's I don't know, it's so interesting to me. The Hadron Collider too. I mean, that's what we're learning about here. And even then, there's so much on Earth that we still don't know about. Just lost civilizations, things in the deep Mariana Trenches and stuff like that. I think it's also fascinating that we don't even know everything about our own planet. Um, I don't know, it's all facts.
A lot of the other interviews, because with science teachers, they all looked more on like the science side of things, more like why aliens shouldn't be able to come here. So I like that the three of you looked more into like we've already been visited, all that stuff.
I think it's an even interesting conversation of how would you bring in like other experiences into it, because we were talking about like the concept of ghosts and stuff like that, and just that is another thing to unravel, but similar to aliens or extraterrestrials or ultra terrestrials or whatever you want to call like the not human species that has intelligent life. I think like that's an even hard to just discount. One of my college roommates is Native American. He was very convinced that he often had people speaking to him that were gone, and that's something that is somewhat documented in the Native tribal community and stuff like that. Is there are people that have experiences like that, and he was one that tended to gravitate, like the not living tended to gravitate to, and it was just too real to not believe it. Like I've seen his reaction to stuff, and unless he is the greatest actor on earth, it was just different, and I find it hard to believe that there are not other entities trying to connect with us in some capacity, whether it's ultra terrestrial, extra, or just not living, like spiritually and stuff like that.
I've heard some good theories about multiverse too. Is that it almost like the last couple decades has almost been science fiction, and I'm not saying that it isn't, but like there's a lot of great minds that are talking about how it's not that far fetched to think that there are multiple realities that exist and are trying to reach, and people have go on record saying that they've experienced things that they can't account for, and it's like slightly different versions of what the way things are for them normally. And so it's like I just feel there's just so much unknown still, and we are still as a human species in our infancies of intelligence. And again, like even looking at the scientific revolution, where a lot of these early sciences are getting a lot of their boosts and their developments, that was only several hundred years ago, and like that's such a small speck of time.
You think about it was the 60s when the space exploration really started to take off, and obviously it's just shy of 1970 when we actually reached the moon and stuff like that, and now we're having legitimate conversations of putting humans on the moon, and we've obviously had rovers on Mars and stuff like that, not a moon but on Mars, rovers on Mars that have taken these unbelievable photos and finding signs of maybe something could live here. We have these rock samples, and look at how these samples are not that different. Now, obviously, gravity and the concept of oxygen that's obviously problematic, but it's so hard to imagine that it's not going to happen in the next 100 years. Like, I don't think I'll be alive. Most of the people that are in the high school community probably aren't going to be alive, but I would guess in the inside of 100 years, we're probably going to make some massive leap and be able to travel to places that we just never thought was possible at one point.
Yeah, we'll just think about like the technology they had on those early spacecrafts in the 60s. We have more technology in our phones than what they had on their spacecraft. And so it's just like times change, and we are learning quickly, but we're still not quite there. But you're right, is that it can't be all that far off.
I think it's also cool because you have there's so many minds that think futuristically, and you get movies like Interstellar, or even what was the one with Matt Damon,
Martian.
Yeah, The Martian, where I think that kind of thing really pushes people to want to explore more. Even October Sky, the little story, the little kid that wants to make waves in the world, and in Hidden Figures and their role with NASA and stuff like that. Like that kind of thing, I think is so necessary to really push us, hoping that we can get to places sooner than later. And I think that's an important part of it, is the more we discover it seems like the faster we're able to progress. And so I think that'll be an important thing in this near future is making sure that we're making a concerted effort to actually not only explore but share with the world what we discover, because I do think that's how progress happens faster. Like if you were to find out you were wrong, would you be happy about that, or would you like what would your thoughts be in the first time that there is actually a
Personally, I'd be ecstatic.